Hello, and welcome to the English Essentials. Punctuation is the part of a language that allows you to read, write, and in some languages, talk. Without a full stop, or a period, you wouldn't know when one sentence stops and another begins. Without quotation marks, you wouldn't know if a character's speaking or if the narrator is just narrating what's happening. Today, I'm going to help you understand what each punctuation mark is used for and how you can use them to effectively communicate in English. First, we have the most used, and the most well-known, the full stop, or the period if you speak American English. The full stop is used to indicate the end of a sentence or an abbreviation. For example, the cat is black. The full stop is used to tell the reader that you have finished your sentence. In this case, it means that you have finished describing the cat. Easy. If you wished to continue describing the cat, then you would need to use a comma, the next punctuation mark. The comma. The comma is probably the most overused punctuation mark. The comma is used to separate items in a list, like this. I bought apples, oranges, and bananas. Easy to understand. But the comma can also be used to separate clauses in a sentence, or to provide clarity. Going to the earlier example, I own a black cat, and she owns a dog. The comma is used here to join the two clauses together. I own a cat, she owns a dog. The comma can also be used to help describe something in more detail. If you wanted to describe the black cat from earlier in more detail, then you'd need to use a comma to separate each descriptor. I have a cat. He is black, has sleek fur, bright yellow eyes, and a long tail. Every descriptor is broken up with a comma. And then you finish that sentence with a full stop, like before. We finished the sentence, we finished describing the cat. If you'd say, lost your cat though, and I don't really know why I'm going on about cats, but it's how I wrote the script, so we're sticking with it. If you lost your cat, then you need to use the next punctuation mark to find out where he is. The question mark. It's used at the end of every question. Who are you? What are you? When are you here? Where are you? Why are you here? Are you here? Is it yours? All of the phrases are asking something. So, to guarantee that the reader understands that your statement is a question, you add a question mark to the end. The exclamation mark is used to show strong emotion, a surprise, or emphasis. What a beautiful day! Ah! That scared the heck out of me. You can't just steal a black cat! It doesn't get too much easier than that. Anything that excites, scares, or needs to be known, you can finish the sentence or phrase with an exclamation mark. The quotation mark. The quotation mark is a fantastic punctuation mark. It is used to indicate speech, a quote, or signify a title. For example, Odin declared, "Whoever holds this hammer, if they be worthy, shall possess the powers of Thor." As Odin is talking, his words will be surrounded in quotation marks. If you are writing about an individual, say Winston Churchill for example, and you want to reference something he said, to use his quote directly, you'll enclose his words in quotation marks. Danger gathers on our path. We cannot afford, we have no right to look back. We must look forward. End quotation marks. I'm having fun. I hope you are. When using quotation marks, you'll always put a full stop or the other punctuation mark that finishes a sentence inside the quotation mark. I cannot emphasize that enough. I'll chuck in some exclamation points to add more emphasis. Your punctuation goes inside the quotes. End of story. If you wanted to use the title of a book or the title of a research paper in an essay or in any form of writing really, you'll put the name of that book or whatever inside those quotation marks. The Catcher in the Rye, The New Yorker, If you're referencing it, the title goes in quotation marks. The colon. Next, we have the colon. The colon's used to introduce a list, an explanation, or a quote. You'll need to bring a pen, paper, and scissors. To use a colon while introducing a quote, you'll need to have an independent clause and the quote you want to use. In 1946, George Orwell published Why I Write: colon. The Spanish War and other events in 1936 to 1937 turned the scale, and thereafter, I knew where I stood. Here we have an independent clause. In 1946, George Orwell published Why I Write. This is a complete sentence. So, because a quote will be immediately used afterwards, instead of a full stop, we'll use a colon to indicate that the sentence is finished and that the next thing we're saying or writing is a quote. And this quote, of course, will be in quotation marks. The semicolon. The semicolon is one of the most useful punctuation marks, but it is rarely used nowadays. In a lot of the books I read, it's used a lot, and it's why I refuse to use Victor Hugo, and we'll get into that in a little bit. I refuse to read Victor Hugo. I do not forgive him. I never will. I'm glad he's dead. The semicolon's used to separate two very closely related independent clauses, or to separate items in a list that already contains commas. For example, I like cats, semicolon, she prefers dogs. These two statements are related. They're both talking about our animal preferences, but they're on their own separate sentences. You do not need to know that she prefers dogs to cats. The sentence, I like cats, can be understood by itself. But because the sentence contains two very related independent clauses, you'd use a semicolon to join them together. When using a semicolon in a list, you'll use a semicolon like a super comma. It's used to avoid confusion when writing. For example, I'm planning a holiday in Europe. So far, I'm going to Paris, France, Vienna, Austria, Berlin, Germany, Amsterdam, the Netherlands. The semicolon here is used to avoid confusion. This example is very useful in places like Australia or the United States, where there are many towns and cities that share names with other cities or countries in Europe, like Poland, Ohio, Germany, Texas, and Peru, Nebraska. Use a semicolon to separate each individual bit that's grouped together. The dash, or the hyphen. It's the same thing, it's just a different word for it, like period and full stop. The dash is used to break up a sentence, or to set off some additional information. The weather was beautiful today. Dash, not a cloud in sight. The hyphen's used to add the explainer. Why was it beautiful? Dash, because there wasn't a cloud in sight. Hyphens are also used to join two surnames together, what we call double barrel names. In the UK, they're quite rare, and they're generally seen as something that's a bit more reserved for the aristocracy. You really don't see it in general, but in America, it's used all of the time. Like actress Catherine Zeta-Jones. This guy's English, but again, like I said, it's rare. Daniel Day-Lewis, and I think he's Canadian, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. The two surnames of probably the parents, generally it's the parents, are joined together, and a hyphen is used between them to separate the two separate last names. The parentheses, or what we call in the UK, brackets. They're used to enclose additional or explanatory information within a sentence. An example of this would be, the concert, brackets, which was sold out, was amazing. The reader doesn't need to know that the concert was sold out, but it's some extra information that provides some extra clarity to the sentence. We kind of know that the concert was a bit more special because it was sold out and that the person writing got tickets. The ellipses, or the awkward or the pause dots, whatever you want to call it. The ellipses, pretty much the 3 dots that scare the heck out of anyone messaging their crush. It's not just used to terrorize people texting. When writing, however, it's used to indicate a trailing off of words or thoughts or an omission of words. If your character's saying, "I'm not sure what to say," you would use an ellipses to indicate that the character really doesn't know what to say. If there were a full stop there, there'd be a slight indication that the person maybe knows what they'd like to say and that they're hiding something. So the ellipses is there to guarantee that what has been said to them previously is a surprise and they really don't know how to respond. Or, if your crush or a friend texts you "okay," the ellipses is used to mean that they generally have something else to say or that they would prefer not to say something. It's a great example of how to use one. The apostrophe. The apostrophe is great. It indicates possession, contractions, or forms of plurals for certain words. For example, my partner's cat is black. The cat belongs to my partner, so the apostrophe is used to indicate that. I can't eat shellfish. This is true, but it's also a great example. I'm allergic. This sentence could be written as I cannot eat shellfish. I am allergic. But to shorten certain words, we can use an apostrophe. Do not becomes don't. Cannot becomes can't or can't. I am becomes I'm, etc. There's a load of examples of this. My favourite is shall not, shan't. It's just a good word. So, these are the most common forms of punctuation marks in English. I hope this video has helped you understand how to use them correctly, and if you liked, please subscribe as I publish a new video each week. And if you've got any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section and I'll try to respond as fast as possible. Or if you've got any video suggestions, that would be perfect too. Thank you so very much for listening, and I'll see you very soon with more English Essentials.